Hello and welcome to the Our Weather API project presented by me, John Lucy, for the course CEN 4930C. Just a quick introduction. My name is John Lucy. I'm currently going to Valencia College for a BS in Information Technology and Software Development. I'm 53 years old. Yes, you heard that right. I started a little bit late in life try to get this degree. Things I enjoy: theater. Currently, I own a theater in Eustis, Florida. I enjoy playing guitar and singing, and I enjoy spending time with my family, which usually happens at the theater. This presentation is about the Our Weather API project, which, when I first started down the path of trying to decide what I was going to do, um, I was a bit confused in the beginning, um, and then towards the middle was confused even further. But in the beginning, the project was supposed to be a small data capture of the weather hourly in Darmstadt, Germany. I chose Darmstadt, Germany because I was deployed there with the US Army and it was one of my favorite places that I had visited. The idea was to produce a website that would show the time, temperature, precipitation, and a graph that would give you the hourly weather change. The build tools that I chose to use Ubuntu as an operating system, along with Apache. I used No Machine as a remote solution to connect my Mac laptop to the server. I used MySQL for my database. Obviously, HTML and CSS would become the front end for the website. I chose the tomorrow.io API for my weather polls. I ran Node.js, Bootstrap, cron, PM2, JSON to CSV to create my data export that would eventually become a Excel spreadsheet, and I used Git for transferring things around and posting them for consumption during the class. And the hardware I used was a MacBook Pro laptop, along with an old HP server HP laptop that I had sitting around here. It's quite a beefy little laptop, and it worked wonderfully for what I needed it to. Implementation phase one was to spool up a new Ubuntu server, apply updates, and ensure Apache was active, and actually allowing me to um, get to the website internally using the localhost call. From there, I did some external testing and realized that I could not get to my internal network from the outside. My ISP had installed a modem in the house that had a very scaled back set of rules that did not allow me to actually change port settings. So after reaching out to my ISP and working with them over the course of about 3 weeks, I was able to finally get them to replace the router with one that I could control, and I was able to get them to give me a static IP. I used that static IP and configured port forwarding along with DynDNS so that I could set up the Our Weather serve http.com URL so that I could reach my server from the outside. Once I had that finished, I went to tomorrow.io and pulled an API key to be used to fetch the data that I needed to capture. Um, Implementation phase two saw me creating the files to generate the front end of the website, the index.html, my style.css, and the script.js. Now, this was still in the phase where I was headed down the road of creating just a simple website that would pull the data via the API and place it on that website directly. At this point, there was no capture to the MySQL database or any of that because I was confused about what I was supposed to be actually doing. Somehow I mixed it all up in my head. I was able to apply the API key and create a script that would fetch the data and populate the website after that data was captured. Sadly, this slide should say implementation phase three. And this is where um, I prove that I'm human. because obviously I forgot to change that header as I was making the slideshow. But in implementation phase three, I installed the MySQL server. I created tables for the data being retrieved with corresponding fields, installed Node.js to run a script for the API to refresh the database fetch. I ran PM2 to keep the node job alive and running. And then I created a cron job to run JSON to CSV to create the data capture to be used in the Excel spreadsheet. Let's talk about my successes and failures. Um, my successes were creating the in-home server, creating the web server and configuring for external access, creating all the jobs and connecting the software for most of the automation, and then successfully connecting the API to the database for data storage. My failures: failing to get the project scope correct in the beginning and not course correcting for probably um, probably the last quarter or third of the class was a huge failure. Time management for this project, time got away from me. That's all I can say. I won't make any excuses. I just did not manage my time very well between the class that I had, other class that I had, this class, personal life, my full-time job, and the business that I'm trying to run. I just didn't manage time well. Um, Biggest failure? Internally, this kills me because I didn't complete this project. I tried. I fought a hard battle. Course correcting in the middle of the project cost me time. The ISP cost me time. Um, and my lack of actual knowledge in this area. The tools that I chose to use, I wasn't very familiar with. Um, I saw this as a challenge when I started out because it was something that I hadn't done, and I really felt confident that I could get there, but sometimes confidence is a killer. And in the end, I wasn't able to complete it. I did, however, manage to complete a website, and at one point it did work. And then when I realized I had done everything wrong, I went back and tried to modify the project to make it pull the data from the MySQL database to populate the website, and I couldn't get that working. So the furthest I got was actually capturing the data to the database, and at one time I had the web server actually populating data, but it was directly from the API. I'm going to switch here really quick. I'm going to take you through a few things that are on the Ubuntu server, just show you a little bit of the code and show you the fact that it is still capturing data to this day to the database. Because I feel like that's really the only thing I can show because I didn't complete the project. So we're going to go down here and we're going to open up No Machine. And I pre-populated this because I didn't want to have to type it out when we got in here, but this is a select statement that I'm using to grab the weather data from my database. I'm limiting it to 10 um, 10 rows, but you can see that it is capturing the data for Darmstadt. Um, if I scroll up here, see if I can make this a little bit wider. This is the timestamp, the weather conditions, precipitation, humidity, wind speed, which you can see there was a little bit of fluctuation, and you can see the temperature change over time. So it did actually get as far as capturing the data to the database, and it was actually populating it out so that it could have been populated back to a website that would have produced a graph. But I just was never able to actually get that to work. So here are my files that I use. This is the index.html that calls the script, which is right here, my script.js. And basically my script.js is all of the information used by the API to pull back and grab the data that I'm asking for. Um, which, of course, like I said, I wanted temperature, humidity, wind speed, precipitation, and the current conditions. The API worked wonderfully, and it still burns me to this day that I could not get everything to work the way I wanted it to. But let me show you my style CSS. They were pretty simple. There was nothing grandiose about what I was doing. I just tried to give some style to some of the containers that was being populated by the data the API was pulling back. So let's go back over to our keynote and oops, man, I got a lot going on. So what hurdles did I encounter during the project? Personal life, family issues that hindered me and stole time from my ability to focus on my college classes. I had to have surgery. Um, and then just in general, feeling overwhelmed due to the limited experience with the tools that I chose to use. Um, this project, like I said in in the beginning, I felt like this was a challenge, and I thought I was ready to take it on. But the further I got into it, and the more the professor saw that I was going the wrong direction, and finally course corrected me, I feel like by then I was feeling a little bit defeated, and it just never came back around. I just couldn't get my head to wrap around what was happening. Did I have probably stopped and reached out? Absolutely. If I had a second chance to do this again, which if I fail this class, I certainly will, I'd seek out a knowledgeable tutor to assist me when I'm stumped. I would definitely reach out to somebody who holds more knowledge than I do, or somebody who's more familiar with some of the tools that I chose to use, because I do feel like there is a pathway to get there. I just didn't find it. Um, the other thing I think I would do is I would not create my own in-house server. I think I would have actually taken some kind of packaged server that was already out there, maybe um, an Amazon server or some other solution. There were several offered in the very beginning of the class, and I overlooked them just because they had a monetary stamp on them. And yeah, I'm running a really tight budget, and it just kind of scared me. I would have taken time management into better consideration if I have to do this again. Definitely carving out a specific time each day to spend on this so that I could get the entire project completed. And now that I have a better understanding of the project, I feel like I probably could get there, maybe with a little bit of help. And then I think I probably would investigate the best way to accomplish the final product. I'm not necessarily sure that what I put together was the best way to get there. I know that I've heard people talk about Python and some other options. I wasn't familiar with any of those, so I just tried to put together the best I could. I definitely appreciate the experience. I definitely appreciate uh, the level of patience that the professor showed with me in this class. I know he was probably frustrated with the fact that I was not headed in the right direction for this project. I believe he ended up telling me twice. The first one I missed until later on, but I do appreciate it, and I do feel like this class was worth taking, regardless of whether I got to the final project and final product the way I wanted to. I do think that this was beneficial to me in the long run, as a life lesson. It taught me quite a few things. It was eye-opening once I got to the end of the semester and realized I was out of time. So that's it. Thank you for taking the time to work with me. I just realized that I went through this whole thing and did not restart the keynote. And I'm tired. I'm spent. I apologize, Professor, but I do appreciate you.